It was a beautiful spring day in Cancelot City. The birds were singing as they tried teaching their babies to fly. The honeybees were buzzing about, going from flower to flower so that they could bring back pollen to the hive. Even the sky seemed cheerful. A stray cloud here and there as the sun bathed in the bright baby blue sky. Sunset Shimmer walked past the freshly rebuilt Wondercourt statue as she reluctantly made her way towards the front doors of the school. It was such a shame to have to waste this day by sitting inside listening to teachers drone on about things she already knew. She held the door open for a couple of her classmates before she continued to her locker. Something seemed a little off today, besides the unusual perfect weather. Her classmates seemed to be ignoring her for some reason. There wasn't anything scandalous going on that she could recall, nor was there any other possible reason for everyone to be acting this way. And then, she had arrived at her locker. There were notes and pictures all over the outside of it, most of them praising how great a person she was. A few of the notes had wrinkled circles on them, as if they were wet.
Okay, I wonder what's all this for? I'll ask the girls in a few minutes. Maybe they'll know what's going on.
She entered the combination on the lock and opened the locker. Sunset was buried under a wave of pictures and paper almost instantly as soon as it was opened.
Holy cow, that's a lot of fan mail!
She thought, as she grabbed her books and tried scooping everything up off the floor. She closed the locker and headed to the music room where she and her friends would always meet before classes would begin. As she continued her trek to the music room, she began to get confused as she thought about the events so far today. There were a lot of notes, pictures, etc., taped to the outside of her locker and overflowing the inside of it. But however, everyone she greeted completely ignored her as she walked down the hallway.
Perhaps I should go back and read a couple of the notes. That might shed some light on all of this. Actually no. I'm already running late as it is. I'll read some of them after our morning meeting.
As she approached the music room, a somber, almost sad melody could be heard coming from inside. Sure, Fluttershy had written a couple of slow songs, but this one was different. Sunset and her friends had never played anything this depressing before. She grabbed the door handle and she paused, just as she was about to pull it open.
Is that Fluttershy crying?
Sure enough, as Sunset pulled the door open, she saw her pink-haired friend sitting against the wall with her head buried in her hands, sobbing uncontrollably. Rarity sat next to her and attempted to cradle Fluttershy in her arms. I can't believe that she left, Fluttershy said between sobs. For good. Oh, I know, dear, Rarity said as she rubbed Fluttershy's back. But hopefully she's doing better now than she was. What's wrong with Fluttershy? Sunset asked the others with concern in her voice. Her question only floated through the air with no response. They, her best friends, they didn't even look up at her.
Did I do something wrong? They've never acted this way towards me before.
She slowly made her way over to Applejack. Representing the equestrian element of honesty, surely she would tell her what happened. She placed her left hand on Applejack's shoulder in an attempt to gain her attention, but to no avail. Was the scene as gruesome as the internet made it out to be, though? Rainbow asked as she paused her strumming. Fluttershy's sobbing turned into a loud wail at that point, confusing Sunset further. Great timing, Dash. Eventually someone will be able to teach you all the meaning of the word tact, Applejack scolded. What? I was curious, Rainbow shot back. But this still ain't the time to be asking about such things, Dashy. It's really, really, really hurtful to ask something like that to somebody who's crying like Shy is, Pinky chimed in. Sunset took in the scene for another couple minutes before noticing that the final member of the group was missing. It was odd, because Twilight was never late for their pre-class meeting. Heck, Sunset couldn't ever remember anybody being later than herself. Where's Twilight? Asked Sunset as she continued to be ignored. Nothing happened to her, did it? But what do you think caused her to do that? Pinky asked as she lightly tapped a slow beat on one of the snare drums. Personally, I think it had a lot to do with what happened to Twilight, said Applejack as she set her bass down. They were like two apples on the same branch.
What happened to Twilight? I really hope nothing bad happened to her. I'd be devastated.
Suddenly, memories of the past few weeks started to flood into Sunset's mind. Are you sure you don't want me to drive? Twilight asked before letting out a big yawn. Yes, Twilight, look at you. You're barely able to walk because of how sleepy you are, Sunset remarked as she slung Twilight's arm over her shoulder and helped her to the car. Oh, how was I supposed to know the movie was that boring? Twilight asked sarcastically. We both thought it would be good, Sunset said as she felt Twilight getting heavier. Hey, wake up. Huh? Oh, sorry. The first couple movies in the series were... Oh, they were great, and the fake review didn't help. Can't argue with that. Sunset opened the passenger side door to help Twilight in. Sunset, I really am good to... Good night, Twilight, Sunset said with a soft giggle, gently kissing her on the forehead after buckling her seatbelt. Let's get you home so you can sleep somewhere comfortable. Oh, Betty buys, Twilight barely mumbled. Sunset couldn't help giggling at her before closing the door. Sunset laid on the horn as a beat-up truck swerving back and forth crossed over the centre line onto her side of the road. She turned the wheel to the left as hard as she could in an attempt to avoid the oncoming vehicle. The sudden movement shook Twilight awake in time to see what was going on. Sunset, look out! Twilight shouted as the headlights came nearer. The events of the next couple minutes seemed to move in slow motion. Just as she thought, her and Twilight had avoided the truck, a shower of glass flooded the interior of the car from the right-hand side. In a futile endeavour, Sunset did her best to keep control of the car before the driver's side slammed against a guardrail, rendering her unconscious. A soft beeping filled Sunset's ears as her mind began to reboot. She couldn't move her head or her right arm, and a slight panic began to seize her as she slowly opened her left eye as her right eye was swollen shut. Her vision was slightly blurry, but she was able to make out a pink and yellow blob sitting next to her. Oh, Fluttershy? Is that you? Sunset asked groggily as she began to fully regain consciousness. Sunset! Oh, thank goodness you're awake, Fluttershy said excitedly. Where am I? And why can't I move my head? Sunset asked as she tried making sense of her surroundings. And what's that beeping? You're in the hospital, Sugar Cube. Applejack said, with a notable sadness in her voice as she entered the room. What? Why? Asked Sunset as she got a sinking feeling in her stomach. You don't remember? Fluttershy asked softly. Sunset thought for a moment, before attempting to shake her head as no. Darling, you and Twilight were hit by a drunk driver after your outing last night, Rarity choked out. Try as she might, Sunset couldn't remember the accident. Possibly because her brain blocking the memory to protect her psyche, or possibly due to her concussion that she had suffered. The only thing that she could remember prior to waking up was helping Twilight back to the car after a boring 2.5-hour movie about cars that change into robots. Then, a thought suddenly hit her. Hey, how's Twilight doing? Sunset asked shakily. The others nervously looked at each other, as if to decide who should answer her question. Girls, what happened to her? How badly did she get hurt? Sunset begged frantically. Everyone in the room looked to Applejack to break the tension hanging in the air. Fine, I'll tell her. So, she let out a big sigh, and she delivered the news. Sunset, I don't know any other way to say this, but Twilight didn't make it. They said she was killed on impact. There weren't nothing the paramedics could do for her, so I'm sorry. Sunset looked at Applejack in disbelief as her already blurred vision became so much worse as tears flooded into her eye. Her friend, her love, had been taken from her forever. The thought of Twilight being killed in an accident she couldn't remember sent a wave of guilt through her body. Darling, would you like a few moments alone? Sunset let out a near-silent yes as she reached up with her left hand to wipe her left eye.
Why her? Why couldn't it have been me?
She thought as the girls hugged her one by one before filing out of the room. I'd like to stay here for a little bit, said Fluttershy, as she sat on the edge of the bed and gently held the broken girl as she wept. If that's okay with you, Sunset. It's fine. It's fine. 2 days later, Sunset was released from the hospital. The plastic neck brace that she had been wearing had been replaced by a foam one that could be removed for bathing and getting dressed. She had bandages around her chest to help with her broken ribs. Band-aids littered her face where the glass in the accident had hit her, stitches underneath a couple of them. Finally, her right arm was wrapped in a red and yellow cast, supported by a blue sling. I get to be the first to sign Sunset's cast, Pinky shouted as she, Applejack, Rainbow Dash and Rarity waited outside of the hospital for Fluttershy to push Sunset through the door. And I suppose you already have a marker to do that? Rainbow asked sarcastically. Sure do, Pinky boasted as she produced a Sharpie from out of nowhere. Y'all reckon she'll be ready for the funeral tomorrow? Applejack asked, immediately changing the mood. Yeah, I don't know, Rainbow said. She's been acting kind of weird since we told her about the accident. If she isn't, then we shouldn't force it upon her, darling, Rarity answered. Just as Applejack was about to reply, Pinky shot toward the building like a cannonball. Sunset! Pinky shouted with excitement. I miss you so much because you were here in the hospital and not hanging out with us at school or at the sleepover we had last night because you were here and not at school or at my house, and we missed you so much because it wasn't the same without you because you just couldn't go to the party. Just as Pinky drew a deep breath to resume her rambling, her mouth was covered by a light yellow hand. Pinky was simultaneously being pulled away by Applejack due to Sunset wincing from the pain that Pinky had unintentionally caused by hugging her. Oopsie. I'm really sorry, Sonny Bunny. I completely forgot you had some broken ribs. Pinky apologised. Sunset accepted Pinky's apology, but the focus in her head remained.
Why did it have to be Twilight?
Rarity and Rainbow Dash helped Sunset into the waiting limousine to take her home. And that's when the real trouble began. 2 weeks later, Sunset entered her apartment. Her depression and feelings of guilt continued to spiral out of control. As she had done every day since returning home after the accident, she removed the firm neck brace, changed into her pyjamas, picked up the same photo of her and Twilight, and pulled it as tight as she could between her broken arm and her ribs, and she wept uncontrollably. She hadn't taken an actual bath since that fateful day. Her hair was unkempt and matted. The only food she had eaten was a piece of toast every couple of days. Why? She shouted through her bawling. It's not fair. I never got to tell you goodbye the way I wanted to. I'm so sorry, Twilight. She moved the photo back from her chest momentarily and gently kissed the picture of her purple-skinned friend before clutching it tightly against herself again. I just wish this is a bad dream. Sunset jumped slightly as her meltdown was interrupted by a light tapping at the door. Be right there, shouted Sunset, trying to compose herself. She set the photo on the end table, wiped her face as best she could, and put the neck brace back on and opened the door. Fluttershy? Hi, Sunset, Fluttershy said softly. The others wanted me to check on you. You seem to be getting more distant the last couple of days. I'm okay, Sunset lied as she led her friend inside. I just miss her. We all do, but the rest of us are worried sick about you. You haven't sat with us at lunch since you left the hospital, and your guitar hasn't moved in the music room. Heck, you even moved to the back corner of the classrooms. I'm sorry. I'm just trying to deal with this as best I can, Sunset said, as they both sat down on the sofa. There was an awkward pause between the two girls, as Fluttershy reached out and took Sunset's left hand. Sunset, you aren't thinking about... No! I can't possibly do that, Sunset quickly denied. I'm just checking. Fluttershy looked at the photo on the end table and noticed something. So she scooted closer to Sunset and gently touched her forehead to Sunset's temple. You've been crying, haven't you? No. I just was rubbing my eyes from how sleepy I've been. Fluttershy leaned back to look at her downtrodden friend. Her attention was immediately drawn to lines on Sunset's face and a slightly quivering lip. Sunset, you have tear stains on your cheeks and on your favourite picture, Fluttershy said softly. It's okay to cry. I do it all the time. Sunset couldn't hold back anymore. Her emotions flooded out of her. She turned and held Fluttershy almost as tight as she was holding the photograph earlier. I didn't get to say goodbye the way I wanted. She never knew the extent of my love for her. It's all my fault, Fluttershy. She cried into Fluttershy's shoulder. I killed her. Sunset, you didn't kill her. It was a tragic accident. You didn't know someone was going to hit your car that night. But it was my fault. I insisted on driving home that night. She would still be alive if I let her drive, Sunset continued. But then it might have been you that died, said Fluttershy, stroking Sunset's back while holding her head. But she would still be alive, Fluttershy. She would still be alive. Fluttershy continued to hold her guilt-ridden friend as she cried into her shoulder. Everything is going to be okay, Sunset. I promise. Okay? Sunset barely nodded as her crying slowly stopped over the course of the few minutes. At the same time, Sunset's body began to get limp, signalling to Fluttershy that her friend was crying herself to sleep. After she was sure that Sunset was asleep, Fluttershy used what little strength she had to gently shift Sunset to a laying position on the sofa. She covered her up with a light blanket and sent Rainbow Dash a text, asking her to go to her house and get her pyjamas and a change of clothes, and drop them off at Sunset's apartment. She knew that she was going to be in for a long night. Over the course of the next month, Fluttershy had spent nearly every night at Sunset's apartment, in an attempt to get her back to her former self the best as she could. During this time frame, however, Sunset had learned how to put up a good front at school and when Fluttershy stayed over. But the days that she was alone, she would still go into her post-accident routine of crying while clutching the photograph of her and Twilight, until one night she had snapped. I can't take this any longer, Twilight. Sunset wept as she stared at the picture. This pain is too great. It's time for us to be together again. She walked to her desk, set the photo on top of it, and looked through the drawers for her X-Acto knife. Once she had the knife, she picked up the photo and slowly climbed into the loft and then laid on her bed, in tears and clutching the prized photo. I'm sorry, girls. I love you like sisters, but I have to do this. It's the only way I can think of to get rid of this pain inside me, she sobbed. Maybe someday we'll see each other again. Sunset bit her bottom lip as hard as she could. She gripped the razor-sharp knife in her right hand and slowly pulled it along the vein in her left arm before repeating the process on the other arm that she had just had the cast removed from just a few days prior. Her blood pulsed out of the 6-inch cuts at the same rhythm as her heartbeat. It covered her and the photo as she held it close to her heart for the final time. Goodbye, she whispered before closing her eyes one last time. Wait a minute. I'm dead? Sunset said aloud as she suddenly noticed the long scars on her arms. But how was I able to open the doors and my locker? She slowly turned around and left the music room, her face towards the floor. She returned to her locker to look at the notes and pictures that made up what she now realised was a memorial. She looked closer at a couple of the notes, which read, "While you may have been mean in the past, your friendship has made us a family. Goodbye, Sunset. Sunset, words cannot describe how much you will be missed. Always in our hearts. While I'm sad you left, I hope you're finally at peace. Then she looked at the photo in the centre with tears in her eyes. It was a photo of all 7 members of the Rainbooms. Sunset and Twilight were sitting in front of the others. Someone had drawn a heart around the 2 of them, and underneath the heart wrote the following: SS plus TS. Together forever. After a quick sniffle, she lightly placed her hand on the photo and whispered, I love you too, Twilight. I know, and I love you too.